of the functionality in your application. In these other frameworks like Next and Nuxt, it uses what's called page-based routing. And so basically what it looks like is you have a directory usually called pages, and if you have a file in there called users or something, and you go into the browser and you hit /users in the browser, you get that page. And if you make a new template, you can just immediately hit it in the browser. So it's actually a very convenient way to develop applications, because when you make a new page, you can just immediately access it and start building the application without really writing a route or a controller or jumping across like maybe 3 different files to build a feature. And I find it like a very fast developer feedback loop and a very productive way to sort of hack on applications. And so that's exactly what Laravel Folio brings to Laravel 10. So I'm going to show you how it works now. So this is sort of the root of my application. I'm going to open this up in my Sublime text. And you can see here, if we go into my routes directory, I don't have a bunch of routes, I just have folio route. And then I say to resource path, views, pages. So if you've used Laravel, you may expect that is in here in the resources directory, and then I have a pages directory, and here's all the pages in my application. And Folio has some additional conventions. So you'll see here within the pages directory, I have index.blade.php. And Folio has conventions to where if I hit the root of my application, the index.blade.php template will be rendered. So that's basically what you're seeing on the screen right now. I'm on the root of my application, and if I go into pages, you can see there's that. And we can see that also within the users directory, we can have another index. So the users index is if I hit /users in my browser, and there's not like an explicit users.blade.php in the page directory, it will say, is there an index in the users directory? And if so, we'll just use that. So if I pop up with this user index in my browser, if I go to /users, you'll see that we have the list of users. Let me add a few more. So that's what you're seeing rendered on the page. And you can see if we hop into that Blade template, that we're just pulling some data straight from Eloquent right in the Blade template and just dumping it out into a simple Tailwind template. Now, of course, you can also route to pages that aren't indexes. So, for example, we have a stats page within this users directory. And in Sublime, I can't make the side text or sidebar bigger, or else I would. But within the users directory, we have stats.blade.php. And if we go into that, it just shows some stats about the users in our application, like how many we have in the application and what the name of the latest user to be added to the application is. And so basically I can access this page just by going to stats in my browser. Oh, can I? Oh, it's user stats, sorry. User stats. And we see how many users I have, and we have that Taylor Otwell was the latest user added to the application. And again, we're just hitting Eloquent directly in that template, keeping things very simple, very easy. So if you can read the sidebar, you might be wondering, what is this kind of weird looking page right here that has brackets in the file name? And basically, this is the same as defining a Laravel route that captures a URL segment as a wildcard parameter. So in this example, I have square brackets, and then I have ID within those square brackets. So this will match any request to /users/1, 2, 3, any ID or any string at all, it will match to this page, and it will inject the ID into the template so that we can use it to access things, to do whatever we want. So this page will be rendered when I click on one of these users. So if I go back to my user list, this links to my page, and I say users/1, and you can see there's my user profile with my name and so on. All right, so everything just works really smooth. It's really fast to develop with. I just drop a blade template in the pages directory, hit it in my browser, start building. Start using Tailwind or whatever I want to do to build my awesome new application. There's even more you can do. You're not limited to just wildcard pages. You can also have wildcard directories. So when you might use this is something like, if you look at this flights directory, I have flights, and then within that I have a directory, brackets ID, and then within that I have connections.blade.php. So maybe we're checking the flight connections for a certain flight, and maybe we're gonna have other pages that are nested under this ID. And so basically I access this in very much the same way that we access the user profile. I just go to /flights/some ID, it could be 1, 2, 3, 4, /connections, and then it will give me that ID in this page, and I can use that to show the flight connections for that flight ID. And again, you can see that it was injected right here into the template. So let's try hitting that route, flight/1/connections. You see there's the connections for flight 1, and I can make this any ID, flight 10 or flight 100 or whatever. So wildcard directories let you build sort of nested URLs like post ID, categories, category ID, and build these sort of deep URL structures just using page-based routing in Laravel. All right, so one more thing I want to show you is the ability to have multi-segment wildcard pages. So this is kind of taking things a step further. So within the orders directory, I have brackets, ... order IDs, .blade.php. And so what this will do is any request to /orders, and then anything that comes after that in the URL, it will capture and give it to me as an array. So I can say orders /1/2/3 or whatever, and I'll get all of that injected into the template as an array. So if we look at the template, you can see that I'm showing orders, and I'm just going to implode all those order IDs, and then we'll just have the list of them there on the page. And you can see that it injected order IDs because I named the page, the thing inside the bracket is also order IDs. So that's why it injected the variable as order IDs. So if we hit this route, order /1/2/3, we see orders 1, 2, 3. So that is an overview of Laravel Folio. Simple page-based routing for Laravel, inspired by tools like Next.js and Next.js. And I can imagine you might pair Folio with something like Laravel Nova, use Nova to update things on the back end, maybe pull some data on the front end. First time in 7 years, I'm going to debut 2 secret projects at Laracon. And I want to kick it up a notch with another secret project, an experimental prototype of something that I'm calling Laravel Volt. And of course, Kaneko, he delivered again with a fresh logo for us here. So I want to warn you, this is an experimental tool that we've been working on. I've been collaborating with some people on it. It may not come out for a few more months. I'm sure we'll be refining it, tweaking it, but Laracon India has been so special that I wanted to share another cool thing with you here today for a second day full of energy. All right, so to make this happen, I'm going to switch to another branch in this project, the Volt branch. Let me make sure that is clean. I'm going to check out Volt. I'm going to rebuild my assets. And I'll just go ahead and reseed our database as well. So let's go back to the start of this. Laravel Volt. What happens at Laracon stays at Laracon. All right, so what's something we could do to make this application interactive? One simple thing that comes to mind is on those user profiles, we could add the ability to edit the user's name. So maybe we click a button, we get a text box, we can type in a new name, hit save. That'd be one simple thing we could do. So let's give that a shot. So let's hop in here. I can go to a profile, and now we have an edit button. But how are we going to make this happen? What tool could we use? Raise your hand if you've ever used a tool called Laravel Livewire. Laravel Livewire is an awesome tool written by Caleb Borgio that lets you build modern reactive applications that feel like they should have tons of JavaScript in them, but they actually are like 99% PHP. So it's a really cool library that lets you write components, almost like React or Vue components, but they're pure PHP, and let you build really awesome user interfaces, leveraging your existing PHP knowledge with no slow build step and JavaScript compilation, all of these other things that come with embracing the JavaScript world. So let's go back to our ID template, this page that we're looking at right now. So I'm going to hop in here, and you can see that now we're showing a Livewire component here within the page. So we have our header, user profile, back to all users, and then we're showing this Livewire component called user profile. And this is not just any Livewire component, it's a Vault component. And I'll show you what that means in just a second. And if you've used something like Vue or React, you know that a component's logic when you're using those tools is usually in the component itself. It's with the template. So if you have a Vue component, you have usually the logic at the top, and then you have like the HTML down below. And the same way in React. And probably the same way in most other modern JavaScript tools. And that's based on a concept called code co-location. And it's actually the same concept that inspired Tailwind. It's basically the idea that all of the code that changes at the same time should try to live as close together as possible, because it's annoying to have to jump between 2 or 3 files, right? Like when Tailwind came along, it was such a breath of fresh air to edit the styling right there in the HTML instead of in 10 custom CSS files that had 2,000 lines apiece, and you never know what will break when you change them. So that's what inspires these sorts of architectures, and that is also what has inspired Vault as well. So let's crack open this user profile component. And it's in a folder called Livewire, and as soon as I crack it open, you can probably tell this is not just any Livewire component that you might be used to. And Vault actually lets us write the Livewire component right in our Livewire template. So we have our Livewire component at the top, and then we have the template down at the bottom, and we can use this component to build a live, reactive user interface right in our views directory without writing a single route, without writing a single controller. So if we dig into this page, when we had it up on the screen, you saw that edit link. And so right here is that button. And you can see I'm using wire click so that when we click this button, it toggles the editing property on that Livewire component, which is right here at the top. And what that's going to do is toggle the text area, the text box. So if we're in editing mode, there on line 38, we'll show the input and a save button. And if we're not in editing mode, we'll see the edit button and the user's name, like what we saw before. So if we go back to the browser, we can click edit, text area, we can update the name, hit enter, it's updated. And you can see that's reflected back on our user index. So very easy to write reactive, interactive, Livewire components in a single file with all the code location that we probably all love from Vue and React, but in Laravel and in PHP. So the good news is you write your Livewire components, your Vault components, the same as you would write a Livewire component, because under the hood, a Vault component is a Livewire component. You don't have to learn any new Livewire concepts to use Vault. The components are written the exact same. You can use all of the exact same features that is in Livewire. You can use them in your Vault components without any limitations at all. So you don't really have to learn anything new. You don't have to learn any new concepts. As long as you've used Livewire, using Vault will be really, really easy for you. So I've built a few other pages to show you some of the other cool things you could use Vault for. So you remember our stats page. So I'll go back to it now. Our user stats page that showed the count of the current, the number of users and the latest user's name. So let's open that up in our editor and see what it looks like. So if I go to the stats page, you can see there's the header, and now I have 2 Livewire components in this page. I have the user counter that shows how many users we have in the system, and then I have the latest user component that's going to show the latest user's name. Now let's pop open the user counter, for example. So I'm going to stats, user counter, and again, I haven't registered any of these components manually, I haven't registered any routes, I haven't really done anything but drop the templates into these directories, and everything just works. So in this user counter, I have a Volt component that initializes the count to 0. As soon as the component is loaded, we'll count the current users. And then, of course, as you might expect, we'll just display that count down here in our template. And we're using another really cool feature of Livewire, the wire poll directive on line 26. What this basically tells Livewire to do is every 2 seconds, call that method on the back end again to refresh that count. So this page will be totally live if we add a new user to the page. So let's go into that page, and I actually have a little artisan command called artisan create user. And if we run that, now we have 6 users, and we have the latest users there. So you can see that all of this is live updating, and as we're adding users, we get fresh data, and it all works super smooth, super easy. All right, so that is an example of some other things you could do with Volt and Livewire. So that is a basic overview of Laravel Volt. I want to take it one step further and show you a more advanced feature of Volt before I wrap up. So to do that, I'm going to switch to yet another branch called a fragment branch. And let's go back to the beginning of the application. So I'm going to refresh the database too. We have that user index right here. And we never converted that to a Livewire component in the previous example. And sometimes you have a portion of a template that you want to make a Livewire component without making the whole template a Livewire component. And that's what we're going to do right here. So if I hop into this user index, you can see that down here at the user list, the actual list of users, I've wrapped in Volt directives. And this basically tells Volt everything within these blocks is a Livewire component in line. And then we can hook into that component up here at the top. Volt, name, user list, pass to the component, and then we're good to go with whatever we want to do. Any feature of Livewire, we've hooked into that fragment of the view, and we can start doing things. So in this example, I'm going to get all the users, as you might expect, as soon as the component is loaded. And again, within this component, I've added wire poll get users. That's going to consistently refresh our list of users as we add new ones. And to show you how easy it is to add new features, Livewire features to this component, let's go ahead and add a button to create a new user. So basically to do that, I can just come down here. Let me scroll up a little bit. Come down here, we'll have a new button, give it some margin, underline it. Oops. Create user. And we're going to hook this up to something on our Livewire backend. So let's have wire click. We'll call it create user like that. All right, and then we need to actually add that method here in our component. And I have a user factory, of course, the factory, the database eloquent model factory that comes with Laravel. So we can just say user factory create, and then we'll go ahead and invoke that get users, just to go ahead and refresh it since we just created one, so it will show up immediately. All right, so I think we should be pretty much good to go. We've added a button to create a new user here. So we refresh the page, there's our button. We go to create user, there's our new user. Totally live. And as we said, we added polling to this, so if we create a new user here, we get the new user right there on the page without even refreshing the page. So, that's Laravel Volt. Totally interactive, single file Livewire components that let you build really reactive modern applications without even leaving your templates directory, just like you would in a modern, rich JavaScript application, but leveraging all of the power of the Laravel ecosystem to build something really cool. So what is it good for? Now, would I try to build Laravel Vapor using only Volt? Maybe not, but for a smaller application that has a limited number of pages, this is a really, really productive way to build a prototype, to get something working really quickly, to have a really fast development feedback cycle, because there's no complicated build, there's no JavaScript compilation happening each time we make a change. So, like I said, these are both experimental prototypes. I'm sure we'll keep working on them. We need your feedback based on what you've seen today. You're the first people in the world to ever see these packages at all. So we need your feedback. And again, I'm Taylor Otwell. I created Laravel. I've had a great time in your country. And, oh my gosh, I messed up my finale thing. Oh, it's just at the root, I'm sorry. Thank you all for having me at Follow me on Twitter, Instagram, you can email me. I'll be hanging out here until the last person leaves to meet you all. So thank you to the whole Laracon India team. Thank you.